to the Windows 10 series class here. My name is Bruce Turner. This is the Squim PC Users Group, and this is take number 152.
Go for it.
Okay, well, welcome to the meeting this evening. We're going to talk about one of the most fundamental things in Windows, which is the Windows file system. And it's actually the fundamental thing you should know working with pretty much any operating system, whether it's Windows or Linux or Android phone or Mac or whatever. The file system is one of those things that once you understand how it works, clearly half of your job is over, half of your job is done. So we're going to be looking at today some Windows file systems and how they fit into the things that will help you to learn and understand what's going on with Microsoft Windows and how to get around. Okay, we have this one little, I'll call it a cheat sheet here, and we've got under everything that I have titled here, it's a hyperlink to somewhere. Like if you click on profiles, it will take you out. Okay. It will take us out to the internet, and it will bring up a site. It might be Wikipedia, it might be Encyclopedia Britannica, it might be somewhere else on the internet, but it will have information about how to use about user profiles, okay? And user profiles, we're going to talk a little bit about this. I could easily spend 2 hours on the first couple paragraphs here, but we're not going to do that. We're going to study and learn things. We're going to get a big picture, and the reason I included all these links is so you can go back whenever you want and you can rediscover. We're going to have a video that's going to show these things as well along the way. And let me click off on something over here. This is my recording just starting out. He's getting sound as well. So we're going to be using the screenshots that you can bring up on your computer that will be on YouTube, so you can go through these afterwards. And I guarantee you it'll be a lot easier to read on YouTube than if you're sitting in the back of the room. But we'll do the best we can along the way to try to make things easy and try to get this to flow through. So basically, we're going to talk about files and file systems and different things that are used in the Windows environment to do with files and directories and folders and things like that. And we're going to try to keep it clear and concise so that the people who don't understand a whole lot about it and have something to take home with them. Those of you who are more advanced, we will have other classes in the future, but also if you can get through all these links and understand everything that's going on, you know a heck of a lot more than I do. So there's a lot of stuff here, and we're going to end with profiles and roaming profiles and things like that, things you probably never heard of, but you will understand at least how it fits into the big picture when we're done with this session. Okay, so what is a file? First of all, if you have a Windows computer and you turn it on and you see all these icons and you see all these little bars and you see all this stuff all over the place on your Windows computers, what are all those things? Do you have any idea what those things are? If you were to give them one word, they're objects, okay? Everything in Windows, everything in a windowed environment is an object, and everything uses an object-oriented profile. So everything that's an object, whether it's a file or whether it's an icon or whether it's a bar, it can all be programmed and changed if you have the right applications to do that with, and of course the knowledge that goes with it. But on top of that, when you have objects, every object has properties. For example, if I were to right-click on this page here, I see document properties, and if I click on the document properties, it will tell me about the properties of that document. If I'm on a page that has icons on it, and I right click on it, it's going to have properties. So every icon, every file, everything in a windowed environment is an object. And every object has properties. Okay? And we're going to be discovering what some of those properties are along the way today, because they can be real useful as we go through these operations. Okay. So, the file is a basic unit. Information is stored. It can store data, it can store information, it can store settings, or it can store commands, or other things can be stored in these files. Where's my pointing stick? I didn't get a good one yet. So, a file is going to be the repository of information. Now, every file is autonomous, okay? You cannot, in the same folder or the same directory and folder are going to mean the same thing to us in this session right here. In the same folder, you cannot have two objects that have the same file name, because if you did, they would get confused, okay? So in a folder, for example, we're going to look at something called the root directory in a little while. You can't have two files called test.txt. But you can have two files. You can have text1.txt and text2.txt, but they can't be exactly the same. Otherwise the computer gets confused. But you can have two files with the same name as long as they're in different directories or different folders. So we're going to look at that in a little bit. But what we really want to talk about today, and what I titled the class, was Windows File Systems, okay? Because although when we open our Windows Explorer or our File Manager in earlier versions of Windows, we excuse me, we have to learn how to navigate around the file system. And it looks similar no matter which operating system you're using, but the underlying underpinnings of that could be different, and we're going to talk about that a little bit. Some Windows file systems, the original one that we talked about is called FAT, F-A-T. It just stood for File Allocation Table. And then FAT32, does anyone know what the special thing about FAT32 is? It can work on both a Windows computer and on a Mac computer. Okay, so it's a file that's compatible with both systems. HPFS was out there for a little while, but they're not using it anymore. Extended FAT is now out there as a way to format large disks, like your large thumb drives. If you want to format a large thumb drive larger than 32 gigabytes, you need to use something like exFAT, or you need to use NT file system. Yes, sir. So the 15 seconds. So the NT file system is a file system used by pretty much all Microsoft systems today for their system partitions. So we're going to be looking at NTFS quite a bit more as we go through this session. Another thing we're going to look at is common file extensions. And when I talk about a file extension, I'm talking about like a test.txt file would be, the file extension would be everything after the dot, everything after the period. So it'd be the TXT. And actually a lot of stuff was done with that. So we're going to see some examples of that. Now, file associations are important because they tell us what to do when we double click on an icon. It tells us which program that's going to open. So we're going to be doing a little more working with files and folders. We're going to be looking at selecting files, and then we're gonna start looking at your individual profiles. Now, I know a lot of people like to get new computers. In fact, we all like to get new computers once in a while, and sometimes we want to transfer our old data over to our new computer. So it's a good idea to know what data to copy and what data to put onto your new computer. And we're going to learn that tonight, okay? So now you can go out and be in the business. You know, you can transfer people's data from one computer to another. We're going to look at a couple of special files and special profiles a little bit. If we have time, we'll look at some of this other stuff on the bottom. We'll see how far we can get in 2 hours. Does anybody have any questions off bat before we start getting too deep into this?
Is every icon on your desktop, everything that has a name, that is
Objects.
Object.
Those are all objects. So when you're working with Windows or other graphic environments, you're using a object-oriented programming to work on the objects. So if you're working on a project, for example, I know this is getting a little far ahead, in Visual Basic, it basically has two parts to that object. It has the properties of an object. You have to define it. Is it an icon? Is it a file? Is it a picture? Is it something else? And then you have to also include that information into it as well, so it knows where to go with it and what to do with it. Okay, so this is the task manager. How many people use the task manager? Okay, everybody should know how to use the task manager. And the easiest way to get to the task manager is coming down to the task bar on the bottom here. And we're in Windows 95, so we're not going to see it here. When we get to Windows 10, we'll look at that a little further. Didn't mean to confuse you. Okay, so this is Windows 95. Okay, remember this here? With a little nice little teal blue type background. Set up your Microsoft network. You even have a setup on here for AOL.
Outlook Express.
Yeah, so it's been a while. But the big thing that we're looking at in this is the Explorer. Okay, this is the exploring using the file manager. And basically, what I want to talk about here is the hierarchical tree. And the reason I like using Windows 95 is because we have these little pluses. You see these little pluses down here in the tree? Okay, and there's another little plus here, and another little plus here, another little thing here. Okay, so what we're saying is we have a hierarchy. At the highest level, it's what's called an inverted tree, and what's called the root at the top and the top of the tree at the bottom. It's probably the easiest way to explain this. So we're going to turn our tree upside down. So this is the root of our tree way up on here, and that's called the desktop. This is our Explorer desktop. And then we have the computer, which we're looking at, which is also contains a lot of information. The computer contains an A drive, and it contains a C drive, and here it contains an application folder called Acrobat 3, and under that it has Reader, and under that it has fonts, and under that it has PFM, and that's a particular font. But if you look at it here, this is how a logical drive is shown in Windows. Now, we're going to talk about files, and we're going to talk about how they're organized, but we also need to talk about the disk medium that holds them. And the disk medium that holds those files in the folders needs to be organized in such a way that it's understandable by both the file system and by you, the user. So at our lowest level, we have the logical drive, which is the C and the colon. And C drive is used mostly for your system drive. Okay? What was the A drive used for mostly? Yeah, it was used for floppy disks. And if you had two floppy disks, it was usually file A A drive, A colon, and then B drive. Then you had the C colon. If you were lucky enough to have a hard drive back in the day, that would be your hard drive, your C drive. And then if you had a CD-ROM drive, what did that usually come up as? That usually came up as a D drive. But none of those letters are carved in stone because they can be changed to whatever you want. We're not going to be changing them now. That's a more obtuse, can I use that word? It's a little more out there, so we're not going to go there. We want to keep it understandable. But if you look at this path here, especially starting here at Windows 95 and seeing Acrobat and Reader and Font and PFM, you can see the same thing here. So here's our drive, and here's our first folder, Acrobat 3, and then after that we have Reader, and then Font, and then PFM. Yes, Tom?
Acrobat is a folder, a file,
Yes.
and then it holds,
It's a folder.
it's a folder. and
It's
it
an
holds-
object.
And it holds Reader.
Exactly. Reader. So here is Acrobat 3, and its contents are over here.
How did Acrobat 3 get created?
Somebody put it on there.
It was already on
It
there.
was already on there. Actually, another example we can use, which might make more sense to you, would be under My Documents. Okay. So I actually put a few files in here, and under My Documents, this will be our first level right here. So this would be the root of the My Documents folder. Okay, you see that?
Uh-huh.
So in that, we also have a level 2 folder here, and we also have a file. Okay? So this level 2 folder is going to contain something else, or it could be empty. But let's look at what we're looking at here first. Let's click this little plus sign over here. So here's our level 2 folder. So you see it in two places now. Okay? If you click on this level 2 folder, we have a level 3. I only went up to 350, so bear with me. And then we have a level 3 folder here, and you can see with level 4, there's no plus sign.
Right.
So that means this is the last folder here that has a subfolder inside of it. You see that, Tom?
Mhm.
And there's no file there's a file doc1 in here. If we look at that doc file here and we look at the properties, okay, we can see that it is a text document. Let's move out of the way here. It's a text document. It says right here. Okay? And it also says doc1.txt. Okay? Now that was the old MS-DOS name. If you remember, if you've been computing a while, back in these days, you could only deal with 8 letters in the file name, a dot, and then 3 letters on the file extension, which we're going to talk about in a few minutes. But that was due to limitations on the 16-bit operating system, which Windows 95 was built upon. Okay? But you see here it says doc1.txt, and here it says doc1. What is this file up here missing? It's missing the .txt, isn't it? Well, where is it? Well, let's look at something a little trick here. If we go under View and we go to Folder Options, these are all things that you can do with that particular object. We can view here. And in fact, we're working with the whole file manager right now. Hide file extensions for known file types. I'm going to unclick that, okay? And I'm going to say, okay. Now, you see how it says doc1.txt? So this means that .text must be a known file association, or a known file extension, excuse me, a known file extension. It's also a known file association because what program will open up when I double click on this? Well, you see this looks like a little text editor, and on Windows, what's the default text editor? Notepad, right? So if I double click on this, open up a notepad, so I can save a note here and test this, oops, I can't even type. Box. Anyway, he's gonna jump. Okay. So we're gonna save this now. Okay. And we're gonna use, yes. So if we were to double click on this file again, let me just get back here again. Now it has this information in there that's been saved, okay? Yes, excuse me, my cursor doesn't work that great there. So you see how that changed from 0 to 1? It was 0 kilobytes because it didn't have anything in it. And it changed to 1 because now it has something in it. Now if I put 10 more words in it, is it going to change to 2? No, it's not going to change to 2.
Too small.
Because you're dealing with something called blocks and sectors when you're talking about disks and things like that. We're going to get to that in a minute. You would, depending on what size your blocks are set for in your file system, your operating system, your formatting of that disk, it's going to show you how much you can put in each block. When you get past, say the block is 1 megabyte, okay? Or say it's 1 kilobyte, let's say it's 1 kilobyte. That means you have 1,024 characters you can put in that block, okay? So most programs will not change to 2 until you fill up that block. And then when you go to the next block, they will change to a 2, okay? Because it's using 2 of those 1 kilobyte blocks. Now your blocks can be 50 kilobytes as well, okay? But that doesn't mean your file can't grow to 2 kilobytes or 3 kilobytes inside that 50 kilobyte block. But it will, it just depends on how you formatted your disk, and if I say anything more about it, I'm sure I'll confuse the heck out of you, because I'm starting to confuse myself. Okay, but anyway, if we work our way back up through these levels here, you can see this is the 3rd level. It started at My Documents, 1, 2, and 3, and then it has a 4th level, which is the same as this here. If we come down to here, we have another file in here. Notice that this file has the same name, but it can exist if it's in 2 different folders. But if I went here and I went copy, and I went into this folder here, and I right-clicked and I went paste, it says it already contains a file with that name. So you can only have a file with the same name in 2 different folders. Does that make sense?
So even if it's in the same object, is that what I want?
No, so this is an object here, and this is an object here. This is the object that is right now, I'm having some trouble with my pointer here. This object here on top is living in this folder right here, in level 4 folder. This one was copied from somewhere else, and I'm trying to copy it into here, but it won't let me because it already has a file with that name, okay? So you can't have 2 files with the same name in the same folder. Does that make sense?
Yes. Well, what I was kind of asking was, but you can have 2 files with the same name in the like My Documents, and you were going down in this.
Right, I can have the same document in all these different folders, even if they have the same name, but I cannot have 2 with the same name in one folder.
Okay.
Okay? It's a good question. All right, so remember every file has properties. Folders have properties too. So this is the next thing we're going to look at. I told you we're going to look at file attributes, okay? These are simple file attributes because this is Windows 95, okay? And we're not set up for any networking at this time. But you can click this little box here and click on Read Only, okay? And then you can go try to edit that file and try to save it, and you can't save it. You can't do anything to it. The only way you can save it is if you give it a new name. Okay, but you cannot save that file with the same name because you got it set for read only. Okay? Archive basically means it's been copied once, either by a backup or something else. If you click on hidden and you say okay, and then you refresh the screen, it's supposed to go away. And it's not. So let's see what's. Okay. Excuse me a moment. Go back down here. Okay. Right click, properties, hidden, it didn't get set. So hidden. We'll go back up here. Let's say okay. Now it's gone. So where did it go? Presto change up.
No, it's still there, it's just not.
It's not viewable by the file system because the attribute hidden was set on that file. And the only way you can see it is to go into View, Folder Options, and look at your View up here, and then Show All Files. Instead of Do Not Show Hidden or System Files, Show All Files, okay, okay, and now it comes back up again. So these are attributes, and I'm just showing you these attributes because it's important that you understand that files can be manipulated. Say you get an email that someone sends you that has some files attached to it, and you download those files to your computer, and in that group of files there's one with a hidden attribute set. You wouldn't know what you're getting. You could be getting something malicious and you wouldn't even know it because you can't see it. Out of sight, out of mind. You know, if you can't see it, it's not there. So,
What did
just,
you reveal it again? What did you do?
I went to. I'm gonna unclick hidden here so it doesn't go away again. And say okay. So I went to View. And I went down the folder. See, when your mouse doesn't work, you can use you can use your keyboard if your mouse doesn't work. So if I were to hold down the Alt key and hit, if I were to hold Alt and, let's see. Let's go to View, Alt V, Alt O, and then the second tab up here, and I want to View. Come on.
Where did you do?
If I went over here to View, I clicked under Hidden Files, I said Show All Files.
Thank you.
All right. So the other thing in here that we want to look at is in the properties. And the reason we're working with Windows 95 here is it's a lot more confusing in Windows 10. And you'll see what I'm talking about in a few minutes. So this .txt is known as the file extension, okay? And this is a very common extension in Windows. What are some other common extensions? Well, how about a picture? Could be a JPEG, JPG. How about exe is an executable file, right? How about something else? How about some music? You can have an MP3. Okay, that would be a well-known file extension. So if you were to double click on, if this was doc1.mp3, and you double clicked on it, and it was a valid piece of music, and you had a music program on your computer, it would automatically open up in that program. Well, how does it know how to do that? Okay, so if we go back to get out of here. Okay. So, you have something called extensions, and you have something called registered file types. So if you see something that has the word registered in it on a Windows computer, where does that mean the information is kept? In the registry. Okay, registered items are kept in the registry. Now, in older versions of Windows, they're also kept in special files that end in .ini, but with the Windows versions we're using now, those files we don't really use those much anymore. But you can see this one has an extension ASF. Let's see if I can go tab. If we go down the list here, let's find something that. Okay. You can see a file folder doesn't have an extension, does it? Give me just a minute here. Wish my mouse worked better. Oh. So if you have a movie clip, well, here's it could be an MPEG, or an MP3, MPG, MPE, MPA. This doesn't have the modern stuff like we're seeing in Windows 10, but all I'm really trying to show you here is that when you have files that are registered, they go into the registry, and it knows that if a file comes up with one of these extensions on it and you double click on it, it will open up with the file associated with that extension. If I go down to text, for example, make sure I can get past it here. A text document, this is what I was talking about. A file that has an extension .txt is going to open up with a file called Notepad, because that's what's registered. So when you install Microsoft Word on your computer and you're doing a document, or you want to open a document, and you see the file extension DOC or DOCX, what do you think those extensions are registered with? Microsoft Word. So when you double click on them in a file manager, what is going to open up when you double click on something that ends in a DOCX? Microsoft Word. Okay? Does that make sense? What a file extension is and how an association works. An association is a registered entity, object, let's call it. There's a registered object in the system registry that if you can actually find all these, and we'll look at them in Windows 10 as well. How are we doing on time here, Dick?
Pretty good.
You need to stop? Let's go ahead and take a
Getting
first
close,
break.
whatever you want to do.
All right, let's take a first break for a minute here, okay?
Okay.